Welcome to Ladies Talking Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
And it's June, and the Stanley Cup Final is just about to get going. It's a repeat, ends up being a repeat of last year's final with the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers facing off in the Cup Final. So, I didn't predict it would be the exact same final, but this is like the third time, I guess, that the same teams like back-to-back coming back to play each other. So, yeah, it was Edmonton, the Islanders, I think it was, way back in the early 80s. And then Pittsburgh and Detroit. And then now it's Edmonton and the Panthers. So, who are you picking to win the Cup? Let's just get right into it here. We were talking a bit about it before we came on, but we got to make a pick.
No, I'm not. We don't care. It's really not anything about who I want to win, but maybe I will say Edmonton now, because in those three examples you just mentioned, you had Gretzky losing and then coming back to win. You had Sid losing and coming back to win. So now maybe it's McDavid's turn, losing last year, coming back to win. Would I be happy with that? No, because of course I want the Leafs to be the first team in God knows how many years, over 30 years to be the team to win, but that's not going to happen this year. So, just if you go by those statistics, and
you can just see, the last game versus Dallas with the Oilers, that's the fire that I want to see in our captain as well, or somebody on the Leafs, when he goes in on that breakaway and he just gets it done. Yeah. He just gets it done. Whereas we have so many breakaways and we don't get it done. William Nylander is, he's gotten it done in the regular season, but in the playoffs, when he has that breakaway, you got to finish. You got to finish. And Connor McDavid, and just that drive that you could just see it in McDavid's face. But all right.
Overall, for me, before we move on, I just think that you can tell with McDavid that he hates to lose.
Yes.
You see that also in Nathan McKinnon. They hate to lose. I think our guys are too comfortable with losing. I want to see them hate losing more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'll go with Florida only because what you said. I want to wait for not to say I want them to win, but I want the first Canadian team in over 30 years to win, to be the Leafs, and I just can't stand seeing former Leaf players, Kasperi Kapanen, Connor Brown.
I know. Oh my God, that will be horrible.
It would just be.
That guy left our team, was recycled through I don't know how many different places, and then ends up back with them and
could win a cup, right? Yeah. It's just So
there's no result in this final that is going to be pleasing for any Leaf fan. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
All right. So a reminder, while you are listening to the show, or if you're watching on YouTube, we would love to hear from you. Please leave us a comment or a review and follow our podcast wherever you are listening. It's time to get into the show now. And this past week, GM Brad Treliving gave his season-ending press conference. So we're going to talk about that and a lot of other Leafs news with Lance Hornby of the Toronto Sun. So without any further ado, let's talk Leafs.
Okay, so we want to welcome to the show Lance Hornby of the Toronto Sun newspaper. Lance has covered the Leafs and the NHL as a reporter for over 40 years now, and he also writes feature articles for the Sun.
Lance is an author of a number of books on the Toronto Maple Leafs, where he gives readers an inside look into this historical franchise. He follows the team every day at home and away, and we welcome Lance to the show. Thanks for coming on, Lance.
Ladies, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
We're well.
Considering another Leafs early exit from the playoffs.
Yes, as well as possible.
Yes. Well, it's unfortunately you can set your clock to, or you set your calendar to June 1st by the Leafs, but it's been, that's unfortunate. And I just looked up today, I believe it was this date in, I want to date your show because I know it's recorded later. But anyway, as we speak, it's the 4th anniversary of the Leafs losing that Game 7 to Montreal in the bubble series. That would have obviously had a different impact. Let's say not the bubble series, but the COVID series. That again would have changed things had they won a Game 7. But anyway, we'll
thanks
move on
for
to
that, Lance.
Yes, that's right. So we get the show
Great
started.
Way to start it off.
We get the show started on a definite high, but I'm sorry, that's second nature in me to look at those sort of things because the Leafs have been so close to playing in June. I know they played in August for COVID reasons, but back in '93 too, they were right on the cusp of playing June 1st had they won that Game 7 against the Kings, and so. Anyway, it's I know the Marlies have played in June. Certainly, I've covered them there. But anyway, one of these times.
We remember that '93 run. That was a lot funner than even the day.
We're just looking forward to being able to wear T-shirts in the stands and be sweating in there. That's like a foreign feeling now.
The Maple Leaf Gardens that year in 1993, it was
so hot.
A sauna
my God!
Because they had no air conditioning, and so several we'll say veteran members of the press corps were also in various stages of dress way up in the press box, and the old not the gondola, of course, but the press box there, and it wasn't a pretty sight. Let's just say that it's a good thing. It's a good thing the internet wasn't around in those days, or it would have been. It would have been, it would have been time to put the kids to bed early.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, let's get to today. We're going to start off with the, the most recent press conference, because it's press conference season for the Leafs. It seems all the time. But I guess with Brad Treliving and his press conference, and other than what everybody's talking about is the DNA comment, the change to the DNA, but other than that comment, what stood out to you from what GM Brad Treliving had to say in his press conference?
Well, I think this was really his first introduction as the, there's not a director of hockey operations for the Leafs, but now there's no president. So certainly you had to take a lot of what he said, much more seriously because he's going to have a better and more deeper role in this team as far as the makeup of it goes, the DNA, as it were. And he had a bit of explaining to do too, because he's not a neophyte. He's been on the job 2 years now, and it's, some of the players that he put faith in, as well as the departed Brendan Shanahan, also let him down. And of course, some of the changes he made at the trade deadline certainly helped, but again, failed to push the Leafs over the goal line as far as getting to the third round. So I thought it was, I thought he was quite honest, which was really good. That's what the fans want. There's a lot of angst out there, and now the pressure is solely on him. I think going into next year, heaven forbid the Leafs stumble in October, as we all know they've done at various times, and people sort of jump to conclusions. If you remember early last year too, that they didn't get off to a great start, and everyone is wondering, is Craig Berube the right man to lead this team, et cetera, et cetera. So he'll be under some big scrutiny over the summer, certainly with the moves to be made to handle Mitch Marner, to handle other contracts, John Tavares, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought he established a good rapport. If it's good that he speaks a lot more than Kyle Dubas did, and certainly a lot more than Brendan Shanahan, who should have been more. We shouldn't only hear from Brendan Shanahan once or twice a year. I think if he was able to speak a little bit more, people might have had more sympathy for him and his plan, the Shanna plan. Now it's somebody else's. We could retire that term, I guess. But certainly, if he was able to explain himself more and be more open, to the media, perhaps there'd been more sympathy for him. But Leafs lose again. Someone's got to pay the price. And after 11 years and sticking with the core four, it was Shanahan. Now it's Brad Treliving show.
Do you think we, like in the past, like we've had like coaches, GMs, and certainly other teams, coaches, GMs, they do interviews during the season. You can hear them on, various podcasts, radio shows, whatever. That kind of has gone away with this Leafs regime. Do you think there's a possibility that we might hear more from them, and have more access? Like it's been a long time, for example, since we've had that kind of access with the players.
Yeah. No, it's sort of I can almost pinpoint to the time when it started to go away. It was when Pat Burns took over, and at that time, Mike Murphy and Mike Kitchen, the assistant coaches, were always talking to us. It was great. And then Pat Burns wanted it to be the Pat Burns Show, which very successful coach. You can't begrudge him that. But that was it for assistant coaches, and very slowly it worked its way through the organization. Certainly that there was less and less access, and now you get to you get to the 2000s, and certainly the way the Core Four came up, it was at first everybody loved them, in terms of they loved the off the cuff stuff. If you remember Marner and Nylander and Matthews all at the boards that first year, and they were singing along to the music at SBA, and everybody thought, "Oh, that's great." And Kyle Dubas wanted them to, be more in tune with off ice stuff. He thought it was really healthy for them to be involved in things like fashion in Matthews' case, and some other projects that Mitch Marner had going. But it's been more of those four being isolated. If you don't see those guys ever sit down like John Tavares did at their stall and just shoot the breeze with us. Have Auston Matthews sit down and Austin, tell us some funny stories about Switzerland and playing there and that kind of thing. Just isn't the way that the team has, and part of it is demand, obviously. But just speaking for reporters, we're not going to ask Auston Matthews to sit down for 20 minutes every day. We just like that, and Marner to a degree, and Nylander. We would just like more, more back and forth, more. More off the cuff stuff, and the team, has protected them in that manner. And when they don't do well, and they still, you're only seeing them in these little clips, in a giant scrum. Not a lot of their human side comes out, I think. So when Keith Pelley, I was quite interested in his press conference a couple of weeks ago, said, we want to engage in the fans more and this and that, and, help the media, quote unquote, do their jobs. I'll be very interested to see how that turns out next year, whether there's whether the Iron Curtain comes down to a degree.
Well, that kind of leads us into our next question perfectly. Yeah. Thanks for the segue, Lance. So
that's why I make the big bucks. Yeah.
Over a week ago, CEO Keith Pelley announced that Brendan Shanahan will not be returning as president of the Leafs. You wrote that it is interesting that the three greatest backers of the Core Four, we're including Marner in this right now, Shanahan, Dubas, and former coach Sheldon Keefe, they're all gone now.
Yeah.
So based on this, do you think that we can finally, move forward and that there will be more accountability put squarely on the players? Like, can we say goodbye to the blue and white disease that has been plaguing this franchise for so many years? Like we touched on it a little bit in what we were talking about just now as well.
We thought that Craig Berube was going to change that, but I don't know. It just seemed like he kind of fell into it a little bit the same way.
I think so. But keep in mind that Craig Berube got pretty good regular seasons out of all those guys. So, what you could get out of Matthews, of course, being hurt. But, Marner had 100 points. Nylander had, more than 40 goals. Tavares, who's constantly written off, once again, comes through at a great regular season. So I think the pressure, and I'm assuming Tavares comes back. We'll just leave Marner out of it at this stage. There'll be extra pressure on those guys next year for sure to deliver. Do
you think that when it all shook out, that Berube was a little shocked in the end?
I think so, and that actually let's go back to the press conference too, where the Pelley press conference, where he said, I'd like to see this coach take a bigger role, because I think they've had a couple of get-togethers since Pelley took over and since it became clear Shanahan was gone. So now you have a better understanding between those guys, and I think Pelley, as he says, recognizes that, that Berube is a Stanley Cup winning coach who has a lot to offer. And the interesting comment I took away was, I think the days of a coach, this is Pelley speak, I think the days of a coach just staying behind the bench and having a role in game day are gone. He would like to have him take a larger role. And I think in conversation with Treliving, again, with those other, with the previous regime gone, I think you will see, definitely an attempt to make the Leafs more of the DNA type team they were against Ottawa and for 2 or 3 games against Florida. Obviously, you need some sort of mindset that has the killer instinct, and maybe the kiss of death was when Brad Marchand said the Leafs had a killer instinct, and then they proceeded to win like 1 game after that. So
I think that's all 3 words.
Yes,
DNA, mindset, and killer instinct.
Killer instinct, yeah, all the.
I think they need to put that on the jerseys next year.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, never mind honor, pride, and courage. That's yeah. You know what? I'm going to use that. Thanks. I'm going to have to store that in a pocket for training camp. That'll be
no problem.
That'll be something. Although I had a joke. A lot of people have been running around with a DNA title and saying so. Some people wonder, does DNA mean do nothing at all? That would be the that would be the way if they come back. That's mine, by the way.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Whether or not, so we'll have to see if Marner comes back, and certainly I'm going to take priority credit for that. I think I was the first one to come up with the Shanna plan too. That was my that was mine. But
you do come up with a lot of these good ones.
had something come of the Shanna plan, that would have been different. I could have put it on marking on a T-shirt. But as it turns out, I maybe I shouldn't take credit for that the way it finally worked out. But anyway, turning around again, back to the topic. I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on these guys to produce. I think the past few years it's been for the Leafs, wake me when the playoffs is here. You should know they're going to have great seasons and all that kind of thing. That you knew Marner would have 100 points. You knew Matthews would score a lot of goals, Tavares, Nylander, et cetera, et cetera. Now there's going to be more pressure on these guys to do it in regular season, because I think the division is going to be tighter, and I think it's going to be a harder road for the Leafs, especially, let's just say, if they can't place Marner's 100 points right off the bat. They're going to have to find a different way. And, it was great they won the division in that, but in the end, same result. So I think you want a team that uses 82 games to develop that stronger playoff mindset. Again, get a good first round match. And, I know it's almost a year away, of course, but it's going to be a very interesting regular season to see if, to your earlier point about Berube, whether he cracks the whip a bit more to try and get this team to emulate what St. Louis turned out to be in 2019.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's move on to Auston Matthews. We mentioned him a little bit ago. And this past season was his first as team captain. How did you see Matthews and how he handled the role as team captain in his first year, let's just say, in comparison to other Leaf captains that you've
he's probably the quietest Leaf captain. I mean,
really, that's interesting.
Matt Sundin was a quiet captain too, who led by example. Not really a rah guy behind it. I actually had to read his book to find out the 2 or 3 times that he completely lost it after a game and started throwing things around. You want to see that certainly from your captain. Now and then, the act gets old if you're doing it all the time. But I had the team not known Tavares, was not. The issue was Tavares going to stay long term? So therefore, it was a good time to give it to Matthews, like they had wanted to a few years ago. And we sort of all know what happened, why Matthews didn't get the captaincy then. But impact wise, he did his job. He led by example. It was a difficult season because he was hurt. It's always tough when your captain misses a month and isn't at full strength. So I would say I wouldn't call it a disappointment, but it was certainly not the year that Matthews or the team would want for him to take the ball and run with it like you see other captains do. Like certainly the run that Connor McDavid is now on with the others. That's what people want. They want to see him take charge. They could have forgiven. They could have forgiven everything that happened in the playoffs had Matthews, was able, injury or whatever, to push through the playoffs and have more impact than he did.
But the thing is, do you think he has that drive in him? Like, I know this injury that he has that nobody knows anything about, that he doesn't want anybody to know about, that doesn't require surgery. It's just like, if it's a back issue, which is what we are thinking it is, it's gonna maybe hinder him for maybe the rest of his career. He's going to have to manage it. Yeah. So, when it comes time to big moments like in the playoffs. Like, does he have it inside him to get through that? Like Wendell Clark did, Doug Gilmour did, Matt Sundin.
Sundin played through a very, very painful knee injury in St. Louis in 96. And also, of course, 02 or 04, I can't remember, but he was 02, I think. In that long run there, he missed a lot of time. And ironically, he came back. Injury. He came back, and
then everything fell apart.
Everything fell apart.
Yeah, we remember that one.
Yeah, how Leafean, as we say. But he says he'll be 100% at training camp, so you have to take that. And he has that. When he scored 69 goals and had the 2 Rocket Richard seasons, those were dominating, and of course they weren't followed up by any great shakes like in the playoffs. So does he have it in him? I want to see him fully 100%. Fully invested as captain after a year. Maybe he just, for all we, and again, this is something we wish we could talk more about him, just to him about and find out, was he sort of stepping lightly because he didn't want to, he was still out of respect to John Tavares to have a lesser role than he did. But you know what? I mean, Tavares was a valuable captain, certainly, because everybody followed his work example. Matthews, it's a little bit different. You see it happen. He's not going to be physical. That's just not his game. He'll be physical in terms of great defensive play and all that. But Tavares would get mad now and then and take a run at somebody. But you need what you need. What a lot of Leaf fans want to see. They want to see him grab Brad Marchand by the collar and shake him like a rag doll, and that's that again.
Just a little bit of fire.
Now
we'd
and
like
then,
to see.
a little bit of fire, and that's something. And again, that's just sort of cut you off, but just I mean, again, that's a product of not knowing him that well, because he's kept, he kind of keeps to himself, as kind of bland answers and that kind of thing. He's, he does, he certainly is he's a man of the world in many ways. If you look at his TV commercials and his, the whole thing, I never thought it would be a big deal about how the Leafs walk into the arena, and now it's, Hockey Night makes a big show of it, and whether or not William Nylander has a shirt on or off and all that kind of thing. It's all neat to watch when they're winning, but people want, the end of the day, people want the Leafs to go to the third round, and hopefully for Auston Matthews, because he's wearing the C, to be the leader in that regard.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, even Matt Sundin had some fiery moments. I remember when he scored that 500th goal. I remember when he scored that goal when Wendell Clark first came back. There were some moments where you saw that fire, right? So
great point. Yeah.
So we just want to see, some of that fire, as much as we love his sellies when he's scoring all the goals, those are great, but we want to see a little bit more of that. Yeah. But I just have one more quick question before we move on to our final question regarding this. How do you think it's going to affect Matthews if his partner in crime is not with him next year?
Yeah,
I mean, that could be a pivotal thing. It could go in either really good for him, that he is going to grow in. Finally, it'll be him, and he'll grow, or. Mm-hmm.
Well, they're pretty comfortable together. I can't see a warm up ending without Matthews and Marner fooling around with the puck and delighting the fans and doing the.
I will miss that.
Yeah, Marner I have to say. Flipping a puck to a kid who's given treats for his dog Zeus and all that kind of thing, and all the trick shots that they do. People will definitely miss that, but I don't know. I mean, not many teams can take another 45-goal right winger and move him up like the Leafs could do with Nylander. Nylander Matthews is always sort of been, discussed, but never, we haven't seen that in,
since the rookie year, basically.
But they would, that would be a pretty dynamic combination. But anyway, you take the money from Marner and maybe find a Brock Besser, or heaven forbid, get one of those Florida Panthers that who are becoming free agents, Bennett or somebody like that, and or one of the wingers that's up for renegotiation there, and put him on the
Brad Marchand.
Marchand, yeah, that would that would be funny. I think Marchand's having way too much fun making fun of the Leafs to actually join them.
It would take a whole thing out of his toolkit if he could troll the Leafs. So
exactly. He'd for over 82 games, that's hard to do. I think part of the Marchand thing was that he was hurt for so long here, and he was just such an impact guy at the end for Florida, and obviously having a big impact now, that's part of his charm, so to speak. But you know what, I think anybody is going to be fired up to play with Matthews. I mean, we've seen some people not excel, or Richie comes to mind a couple of years ago. They've had Max Domi up there that didn't quite work out. But I think if you got Auston Matthews on one side and Auston at center, Matthew Nyes on the left side, you're going to be a pretty successful right winger if you land with those two guys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, our final question for you, of course, then moves to the free agency issue coming up on July 1st. So ultimately, what do you think is going to happen with Mitch Marner and John Tavares? What do you think?
Well, it's been, we'll go back to the DNA comment. If you want to change the DNA in this team, and DNA is obviously quite embedded in the human, in the human anatomy, then Marner has to go, I think, because that's a part of the team that's been great to watch in regular season. You have to make a change. I'm not saying Marner is the sole reason they didn't move on, but there's been a lot of playoff series where things didn't happen, and now you're just at that. The wheel has come around to where they have to make a change, and it's Marner's contract that's up. We're at Nylander's, possibly he'd be the one to go. I'm not quite sure about Matthews or Tavares, but certainly here's their big chance to shake things up and use that money and add something. I mean, it's $13.25 million, at least between 13 and 14. You could add potentially a star. It's not a super duper free agent market. You could add a winger, you could add another center, you could add a defenseman. You could add 2 to 3 players that could really make an impact as far as the free agent market goes. I think you're probably going to ask about Tavares. I say he coming back, taking a bit of a hometown discount. He really wants to play. And I don't think if he comes back, he necessarily has to drop down a spot. I think he had a disappointing playoff, but I think takes very, very good care of himself. And I think he could be a very strong second line center again. Their big thing, though, hopefully right off the bat, is free agency in terms of the restricteds is to get Matthew Nyes signed and move on from there. The other stuff, bottom line guys are coming and going. You can make some changes there. They're replaceable parts: Pontus Holmberg, Yarncroc, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Who do you think the Leafs, the GM Brad Treliving, might go after, like, to get in free agency? If there was one player that you would like to see as a Leaf, let's just say.
I would love to see Bennett, Ekblad, those kind of guys. There's already, rumors already started that the Florida's, obviously, if they win, aren't going to be able to protect everybody just like last year. And you know what? The 3 guys Toronto brought in from Florida last year all made a pretty good impact. And if you're talking about Brad Treliving's,
it's funny.
Forcefulness, he was able to get those guys in. They all made good. So if you can get, if you can get another wave of Panthers in, if you can't beat them, join them, right?
So it's just like Edmonton has basically taken all of the Leaf cast-offs.
Yeah.
Now we're going to take the Florida cast-offs, and we'll be like Florida North.
Yes, exactly. Minus the tax breaks, of course. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think when all those guys suddenly look at their GST and HST, they might be a little bit more reluctant to come north.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, those are some of the guys out there. Brock Besser is, there's great names out there, but they've kind of been ticketed for, a couple of Americans who might want to play closer to home. And, Toronto isn't for everybody. As you know, it was for those 3 Panthers, and it worked out really well. But, there's a reason that not everybody looks at Toronto first. And if Marner's gone, then there'll be some questions about the direction of the team, certainly.
Yeah. The only thing I guess worry about with Sam Bennett is, like, we've seen it before. Like, we had David Clarkson, we had the Nick Ritchie, like, they came here, and then Sam Bennett,
Dave Boland,
Like, you never, like, I don't know. I could just see it being a Leafian thing, as we say, that he comes here and then all of a sudden is like he's not the player that he was with Florida, right?
Well, yeah, but I guess the argument against that would be Steven Lorentz, who couldn't wait to be a Leaf, and he's a lower caliber player and came here on a
he's great though,
on a walk-on basis, made the team though, and made the most of it. So there's always the outliers there, and let's face it, John Tavares came here to make a big difference with the Maple Leafs, signed one of the biggest deals in club history, and was worth it most of the time, playoffs accepted. So that's should be the test case for any star who wants to come back and play in Toronto.
Yeah, that's true. And Sam Bennett definitely makes a difference in the playoffs. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I still think that he's probably they're going to try to re-sign him, I would think. But anyways, like you say, you never know. And of course, could we use some of that edge in our lineup? Absolutely. So anyways, thank you so much, Lance, for coming on the show. Your insights are incredible. As always, you are just a fountain of knowledge. So,
well, thank you very much for having me, and continued success with your show. It's you hear great things about it right across the board.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. So keep up to date with the Leafs and get Lance's articles directly to your mailbox by visiting TorontoSun.com. And you can also follow Lance on X. His handle is @SunHornby. Thanks a lot, Lance.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
So thanks again to Lance for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun. He has so much great insights on the Leafs and the game.
And I love his energy too. Yeah. Like his energy is like always the same, so consistent. He's just so fun to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. And his articles like in the Sun, I love them too, because he just gets right to the point in all of them. It's nothing, they're not like hugely long, but he covers all the big points. And make sure you go to his go to the TorontoSun.com and just check off to get those his articles to your email box, and he'll keep you up to date on the written side of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But the thing that I found most interesting, actually, from what he said, was about how the media. It's almost like the media and the fans have the same angle, or at least I know from my perspective as a fan, is that we're not asking for the players to be available every day, every hour, but we just like to have a little bit more access to find out more about the person themselves, right? Like show a little bit of personality. And it's just, but I didn't realize that it actually goes back, I guess, quite some time, that this type of, going even back to Pat Burns with the assistant coaches and all that, I didn't realize that hidden factor that the Leafs organization has put on these guys. And I just found it interesting, because that's what we want as fans too, right? We just want to just see them a little bit more, and we won't bother you anymore, right?
No, exactly. Like, and if you get a little bit more of an understanding of them as a human, you can have a little bit more compassion for them. But right now, like they don't give us anything extra to identify with, let's just say. It's
like robotic
in a way. Yeah. So, that I think makes it more difficult for Leaf fans to see them, for the people that they are, and to relate to, some of the, the stuff behind the scenes that they do go through. I mean, they are human beings. So
that was an interesting thing that I thought. And, and just his overall, I guess the mentioning of with Auston Matthews, we got into a lot with that, and his first year as captain. I thought that was, he's a quiet leader. Sounded to me as though it's like because of the injury and being named captain together is kind of like a high pressure year for him, and we kind of hopefully or just give him a pass for this year, saying it was okay, and hopefully next year he'll be back on track. He says he will be. So,
I found it interesting though, like when Lance said that, because like I have heard from players and people that have been in the room with him that that Matthews is like a really funny guy, has a lot of personality. And that again underscores that point that what we see, and even I think Morgan Riley said, what we see on the outside in the media, front facing, is not the person that they see.
Right.
So I just kind of feel like if you are really going to grow into that leader, you need to be fully authentic and you need to lead inside the dressing room and out.
Yeah.
I think. So I'm hoping that he grows into that a little bit more this year.
Yeah. All right. So programming note, before we go, we are transitioning to the off-season schedule, and we will be back in 2 weeks' time on June the 18th. And then after that, we'll have an episode on the first week of July where we'll be covering the news from July 1st, free agency. It's going to be a big one. And then in the summer, we'll be coming to you monthly. So yeah, the easiest way to keep up with all the Leafs news and our show is to hit that follow button wherever you're listening to our show, or subscribe on YouTube, and we'll have you up to date on the Leafs throughout the year. You can also find us on the Believe Network at Believe.com. We would also love to hear from you. As mentioned off the top of the show, be sure to leave us a rating or review. Feedback from our listeners is so important, and we thank you for taking the time.
Also, don't forget to look for us on the new hockey content website, hockeyhotstove.com. And another way for you to help us out is by visiting our Ko-fi page at Ko-fi.com. You can follow us there, and if you choose to, you can support us by buying us a coffee. Any donation goes towards helping us produce the show and making it even better for you. So you can find the link to our Ko-fi page on our show notes or in any of our social media profile pages.
And here's my coffee. Free advertising for Tim Hortons. Anyways, all right. And we also, as always, say thank you to our healthcare workers and first responders for all that they do.
And we thank you, as always, for listening and watching Ladies Talking Leafs. Till next time, go Leafs, go.
Do you believe?